What is going on, guys? Thank you for entering the chamber once again. Today we're taking a look at our next set of Jetburn reveals in Dabi 3. This is a character I'm very excited and hyped for, both for himself and for his cards. Before we get into it, make sure you check out Wossy Plays. He was the guy who got to actually reveal these cards, so make sure you show him some love and support. I'll be sure to include a link to his channel in the description. Dabi 3 is a very promising character that helps drive home, similar to Shigaraki 3 from the League of Villains set, that making your opponent make checks can be devastating. And the fact that he shares the evil symbol with Shigaraki 3 means that I think he's going to be a great alternative option to playing that kind of very like control style that Shigaraki 3 gave you. Although Dabi 3 will be more of a value stat focused character. Super excited to get into this one, so let's get started. First off, we have Dabi 3 himself. Dabi 3 is a little unusual in that he's just kind of a giant stat stick. He provides speed or reduces speed. He indirectly gives +1 damage because of his response. And then sometimes you get to make your opponent check a 5 due to like see the top card of your deck. At face value, this isn't the most impressive character, but we need to consider the fact that getting to see the top card of our deck is a lot of information when it comes to spot draw effects. Like any kind of card effect that we can like flip and draw a card at any time, even if we only sometimes get to see the top card of our deck, we need to confirm our next check or spot and draw like an actual attack as opposed to a foundation, which then in turn makes us more likely to check a 5 since we just cleared a 3 off the top of our deck. Very powerful. I think this is going to be a character that will take a little bit of brewing and experimentation, but has a lot of potential. Moving into his attacks. Starting with Quick Burn. Quick Burn is a 2 for 4 that makes your opponent make a check against a 6, and if they fail this attack and your next attack get +2 speed. Even though in Dabi this can end up being like a 6 for 5, because it becomes a 4 and then Dabi gives it another 2 speed, so it becomes pretty fast in Dabi 3 actually. I still don't think this card's really good enough. It's just a bit of speed pump, but doesn't really like do anything. You can probably safely skip this one. Quick Burn is a 4 mid for 4. This is kind of a weird one. The Villain Enhance only works with a small handful of characters right now. I don't know if we're going to see some kind of update to make older characters work. If we do, I could be very interested in seeing what people do with this card. Without it though, all this card does is confirm your next check by either putting in if you call attack for its first enhance, it'll either put an attack off the top of your deck into your momentum, which is good, or it'll confirm that you have a 5 on top of your deck, and that's useful, but that's not enough for me to register this as like an actual card that I'm going to play with, and anything other than maybe like Dabi 3. Now, if we see characters in other sets retroactively get that villain enhance, I might see some experimentation with this card on Evil probably, because Evil has some cards that make your opponent make checks, and being able to make that check get a -2 could be useful. We might see a little experimentation, I'm not sure. I don't think it'll see much play outside of that though, because the -2 is tied to the enhance step, and when your opponent blocks, they're in the block step. So you can't just use this enhance and pass and get like a free 2 speed. It just doesn't work that way. Blue Flame Immolation. Now this is actually kind of like this one's a lot better, I think, than it reads on paper. Because on paper, all it does is make your opponent keep checking 5s and you're burning health. But the thing is that your opponent has 3s, so they're going to sometimes miss. But also this card is a card pool enhance, so you can do this on every attack. If you're going in on like big strings and you have health to spare, this is going to get you free stats. And again, I've talked about it a lot, but I'm almost higher on these attacks for Shigaraki 3 than I am for Dabi 3. But even in Dabi 3, even if your opponent passes every check that against Immolation, that's still another check that they're making on every attack, which turns into another speed from Dabi 3. So even as like a floor, this attack makes all your moves a little faster. So very, very promising card. I think this one's going to see some play. Blue Flame Torrent. This is the card that's going to see a lot more than a little play. Like this is the card I think a lot of people are going to register on all of his symbols. This card is incredible. As a 5 for 5, it's already well statted. Comes with an enhance that you get to do twice, where you make your opponents check against a difficulty of 6. So they almost always have to give you something. Some people run 6s, but most of the time you're going to get something from this. If they fail, Torrent gets bigger and your next attack gets easier. So this is like a great opener because you can set up bigger cards. And it's threatening. I mean, in theory, it can be like a 5 low for 7. In Dabi, it's like a 8 low for 8. It's very, very, like, this is already, like, good, right? But it also has a card pool enhance where you can basically breaker 2 in response to any check by discarding momentum and flipping it. So once you do its thing and it's just sitting there, or if you block with it and you have a momentum, this is just like a free breaker 2 waiting to happen. This card is incredibly good, and I think it's going to be worth some money. This is definitely one you might want to hold on to and wait for it to develop to see if Dabi or Shiggy 3 kind of take their place in the meta. Look at his foundations. All right, we got Activating Hood. Mill 1, our opponent makes a check against a difficulty of 6. If they fail, we commit the card and get 2 damage. Commit for plus 2 damage is like a not great exchange, and the mill 1 is kind of incidental. I guess in Dabi you can mill and you can like check it so you have an attack and then mill it as part of Activating Hood. It's not a very good effect. The only other thing it has is a villain enhance where you can flip to give your next check +1, and it's Tenacious, which is playable while committed. I don't think this card is very good. It'd be tough for me to register it in many decks. I would almost have to be interested in the mill as part of it, as getting some kind of benefit. Without that, I can't see myself ever like really playing this. And like I said, villain is a very narrow band of cards right now, and there's no indication they're going to update their like older characters to get tags. They'd have to errata like 100 and something characters, so I don't. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm not sure what they'll do about that. All right, now let's talk about a common that I am excited for, and Fiery Confrontation. Sorry about that, folks. I adjusted a bit. I had some slight technical difficulties. I had to mess with some settings. Anyways, Fiery Confrontation. This is a card I am incredibly excited for. For people who are a little newer, they won't know this, but this is a reprint of a card called Cage Fighter. Now, it's not an exact reprint because Cage Fighter could also be used on the attack, and Fiery Confrontation can only be used on defense. But that's okay. This, to me, is probably one of the most important change-ups in Dabi 3's entire kit. The ability to flip, respond, and hack a check by 1 doesn't look that powerful on paper, but I guarantee you, especially in the early game, if you hit your opponent when they hit a 3, or if they're playing a move on a 5 or a 6, and even if they check a 5, you make them commit a couple, you're going to make them think, and the extra commit can mess up their turn on defense, or sometimes just make them discard the attack. This is an incredibly powerful card, and you should probably get your foils while you can. This is one I'm super excited for. Next up, we have No Remorse. No Remorse is effectively just flip to draw a card. Making your opponent make 3 checks on a turn isn't too hard. Anytime your opponent is really going in and playing a few attacks, or if you are playing ways to make your opponent make checks, or frankly, even if you're going on yourself and your opponent is blocking, in any of these situations, it's going to be pretty easy to make your opponent make 3 checks, even outside of having a character that does it too. And if you have a character that forces your opponent to make checks like Dabi 3, then the effect is trivial. And then a flip to draw a card is like a good exchange rate. I think this card will see at least a little bit of play. And now for League Handler. Now, probably not surprising, but given that I was a big fan of Fiery Confrontation, I'm also a really big fan of League Handler. I think this is a card that if you're not valuing or considering putting into your decks, even if you're not playing a character that forces checks, you're making a mistake. This is at minimum a sideboard card. Even if you can't force your opponent to make extra checks, being able to give your opponent's like 3rd attack -3, or your opponent's 4th attack a -4 to their check, your opponent's almost always going to fail that check, and that can be the difference between you living and dying. And there's no momentum cost or like discard a card cost or anything. This is just, I mean, I guess you lose the foundation, but it's free otherwise. And in the characters who do force your opponents to make checks, this is just unironically discard an attack in response for no cost. This is a insanely powerful card. I think it's going to see a lot of play by smart players who are valuing defense. You're going to get a ton of mileage out of this. I am very glad that it has a rival's turn stipulation, because it would be so frustrating to have to stick a lethal block and then have, like, I don't know, Dabi 3 give I check a 5, then he gives it like -8 or something crazy on his like third attack, and it's like 8 speed. That would be terrible. I'm very glad this card is defense only. All right, and that wraps up my reviews for Dabi 3. This is a character that I think is going to see at some play. I also think he's going to make Shigaraki 3 I think he's going to be like a meta character. Or at least he's going to be powerful enough to be a meta character. We'll see how many people play it. But I'm a huge fan of his cards and his kit. I'm very excited. This is probably the character out of everything that's been revealed that I'm the most ready, I guess you could say, maybe ecstatic to play with. This is one I'm gonna have a lot of fun with, and I think you guys will too. That wraps up my review. Make sure you check out my next one when I look at Gentle Criminal. It's another character I'm actually pretty high on. Once again, thank you for entering the chamber, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.